Joseph Merrick, often mistakenly called John Merrick, was an Englishman known for having severe deformities, for which he was given the name Elephant Man. But what is the true life of Joseph Merrick? Joseph Carey Merrick was born on the 5th of August 1862 at 50 Lee Street in Leicester to Joseph Rockley Merrick and his wife Mary Jane. Joseph's mother was said to have had some form of physical disability. As a young woman, she worked as a domestic servant in Leicester before marrying Joseph Rockley Merrick, then a workhouseman, in 1861. The other two siblings of Joseph were William Arthur, born January 1866, who died of scarlet fever on the 21st of December 1870, aged 4, and was buried on Christmas Day, and Marion Eliza, born 28th of September 1867, who was born with physical disabilities and died of seizures on the 19th of March 1891, aged just 23. A pamphlet titled The Autobiography of Joseph Merrick, produced in 1884, states that he started to display signs of disability at the age of just 5, with thick lumpy skin like that of an elephant and almost the same colour. According to a 1930 article in the Illustrated Leicester Chronicle, he began to develop swellings on his lip at the age of 21 months, followed by a bony lump on his forehead and a loosening and roughening of the skin. As he grew, a noticeable difference between the size of his left and right arms appeared, and both his feet became significantly enlarged. The Merrick family explained his symptoms as the result of Mary being knocked over and frightened by a fairground elephant while she was pregnant with Joseph. The concept of maternal impression, that the emotional experiences of a pregnant woman could have lasting physical effects upon their unborn children, was still common in 19th century Britain. Merrick held this belief about the cause of his disability his entire life. In addition to his deformities, at some point during his childhood, Merrick fell and damaged his left hip. This injury became infected and left him permanently disabled. Although affected by his physical deformities, Merrick attended school and enjoyed a close relationship with his mother. She was a Sunday school teacher, and his father worked as an engine driver at a cotton factory, as well as running a haberdashery business. On the 29th of May 1873, fewer than 3 years after the death of her youngest son William, Mary Jane Merrick died from bronchial pneumonia. Joseph Rockley Merrick moved with his 2 children to live with Mrs. Emma Wood Antill, a widow with children of her own. They married on the 3rd of December 1874. Merrick left school aged 13, which was unusual for the time. His home life was now a misery, and neither his father nor his stepmother demonstrated affection towards him. He ran away many times, but was taken back to his father each time. At 13, he found work rolling cigars in a factory, but after 3 years, the deformity of his right hand had worsened, and he no longer had the dexterity required for the job. Now unemployed, he spent his days wandering the streets, looking for work and avoiding his stepmother's taunts. Merrick was becoming a greater financial burden on his family, and eventually his father secured him a hawker's license, which enabled him to earn money selling items from the haberdashery shop door to door. This endeavour was unsuccessful, for Merrick's facial deformities rendered his speech increasingly unintelligible, and prospective customers reacted with horror to his physical appearance. People refused to open doors for him, and now people not only stared at him but followed him out of curiosity. Merrick failed to make enough money as a hawker to support himself. On returning home one day in 1877, he was severely beaten by his father, and he left home for good. Merrick was now homeless on the streets of Leicester and was taken in by his uncle. He continued to hawk around Leicester for the next 2 years, but his efforts to earn a living met with little more success than before. Eventually, his disfigurement drew such negative attention from members of the public that the commissioners for Hackney Carriage withdrew his licence when it came up for renewal. His uncle, now unable to support him, Merrick entered the Leicester Union workhouse. Upon entering the workhouse, Merrick was given a classification to determine his place of accommodation. The class system determined which department or ward he would reside in, as well as the amount of food he would receive. Merrick was classified as Class 1 for able-bodied males and females. On the 22nd of March 1880, only 12 weeks after entering, Merrick signed himself out of the workhouse and spent 2 days looking for work. With no more success than before, he found himself with no option but to return to the workhouse. This time he stayed for 4 years. While in the workhouse, Merrick underwent surgery on his face. The protrusion from his mouth had grown to 20 to 22 centimetres and had severely inhibited his speech and made it difficult to eat. The surgery removed a large part of the mass. In 1884, Merrick contacted a showman named Sam Torr and proposed that Torr should exhibit him. Torr arranged for a group of men to manage Merrick, whom they named the Elephant Man. After touring the East Midlands, Merrick travelled to London to be exhibited in a penny gaff shop rented by showman Tom Norman. Norman's shop was visited by Sir Frederick Treves, who invited Merrick to be examined. After Merrick was displayed by Treves at the meeting of the Pathological Society of London in 1883, Norman's shop was closed by the police, and Merrick joined Sam Roper's circus and was toured around Europe. Merrick remained a horrifying spectacle for his viewers, and Roper grew nervous about the negative attention the Elephant Man drew from the local authorities. Merrick's group of managers decided he should go on a tour in continental Europe, with the hope that authorities there would be more lenient. The Elephant Man was no more successful there than in Britain, and similar action was taken by the authorities to move him out of their jurisdictions. In Brussels, Merrick was deserted by his new manager, who stole Merrick's £50 savings, equivalent to over £5,000 today. Abandoned, Merrick made his way by train to Ostend, where he attempted to board a ferry for Dover, but was refused passage. He travelled to Antwerp and was able to board a ship bound for Harwich in Essex. From there, he travelled by train to London and arrived at Liverpool Street Station. He eventually made his way back to the London hospital, where he was allowed to stay for the rest of his life. With Merrick admitted into the hospital, Dr. Frederick Treves now had time to conduct a more thorough examination. He discovered that Merrick's physical condition had deteriorated over the previous 2 years, and that he had become quite impaired by his deformities. Treves also suspected that Merrick now had a heart condition and had only a few years left to live. Merrick's general health improved over the next 5 months under the care of the hospital staff. Although some nurses were initially upset by his appearance, they overcame this and cared for him. Treves observed that Merrick was very sensitive and showed his emotions easily. At times, Merrick was bored and lonely and demonstrated signs of depression. He had spent his entire adult life segregated from women, first in the workhouse and then as an exhibit. The women he met were either disgusted or frightened by his appearance. His opinions about women were derived from his memories of his mother and what he read in books. Treves decided that Merrick should be introduced to a woman and that it would help him feel normal. The doctor arranged for a friend of his named Mrs. Lelia Maturin, a young pretty widow, to visit Merrick. She agreed, and with fair warning about his appearance, she went to his room for an introduction. The meeting was short, as Merrick quickly became overcome with emotion. He later told Treves that Maturin had been the first woman ever to smile at him, and the first to shake his hand. She kept in contact with him, and a letter written by Merrick to her, thanking her for the gift of a book and a brace of grouse, is the only surviving letter written by Merrick. On 3 occasions Merrick left the hospital in London on holiday, spending a few weeks at a time in the countryside. Through the elaborate arrangement that allowed Merrick to board a train unseen and have an entire carriage to himself, he travelled to Northamptonshire to stay at Forsley Hall, the estate of Lady Knightley. He stayed at the gamekeeper's cottage and spent the days walking in the estate's woods and collecting wild flowers. Merrick's condition gradually deteriorated during his 4 years at the London hospital. He required a great deal of care from the nursing staff and spent much of his time in bed or sitting in his quarters with diminishing energy. His facial deformities continued to grow and his head became even more enlarged. He died on the 11th of April 1890 at the age of just 27. At around 3 p.m, Treves' house surgeon visited Merrick and found him lying dead across his bed. His body was formally identified by his uncle, Charles Merrick. An inquest was held on the 27th of April, which ruled his death as accidental, and the certified case of death was asphyxia, caused by the weight of his own head as he lay down. Merrick did not receive a burial, with almost all sections of his body, both skeleton and soft tissue, being preserved for study. Treves dissected Merrick's body and took plaster casts of his head and limbs. He took skin samples, which were later lost during the Second World War, and mounted his skeleton, which remains in the pathological collection at the Royal London Hospital. The exact cause of Merrick's deformities is unclear. In 1986, it was conjectured that he had Proteus syndrome. DNA tests on his hair and bones in a 2003 study were inconclusive because his skeleton had been bleached multiple times before being displayed at the Royal London Hospital. Merrick's life has captured our imaginations and has been depicted in a 1979 play by Bernard Pomerantz and a 1980 film by David Lynch, both titled The Elephant Man.